Evil is not always what it seems. It doesn't arrive cloaked in shadows or announced by dramatic fanfare. It often wears the mask of virtue, blending seamlessly into the fabric of daily life. To recognize it, one must learn to look beyond appearances, to uncover the intentions hidden beneath actions. True malevolence rarely shouts, it whispers, weaving manipulation and control into the quiet spaces of human interaction. This journey to understanding is not just about spotting the darkness in others, but about confronting the shadows within ourselves. Evil, in its most insidious form, does not announce itself. It doesn't come stomping with the clatter of chains or the gleam of horns. Instead, it moves quietly, wearing a mask that blends effortlessly into the tapestry of human interactions. This mask is often one of goodness, charm, or even selflessness. To the untrained eye, it might seem as though the person behind it is kind, considerate, or even noble. But beneath that mask lies something entirely different, intentions that are not aligned with the greater good, but serve only to satisfy personal desires, often at the expense of others. This is the paradox of evil. It is rarely ugly at first glance. In fact, it can be alluring. It knows that in a world obsessed with appearances, the easiest way to hide is in plain sight, wearing the guise of something or someone admired. This is why evil is so dangerous. It doesn't feel like a threat until it is too late. Its mask can take many forms: a seemingly trustworthy friend, a charismatic leader, or even an innocent victim seeking sympathy. The mask is a tool, a carefully crafted persona designed to disarm, to draw people in, and to create an illusion of safety and credibility. The challenge lies in learning to see beyond these masks. It requires a different kind of vision, one that doesn't rely solely on the physical eyes, but also on an intuitive understanding of human behavior. To recognize evil, you must learn to look past the surface, to see not just what a person does, but why they do it, what motivates their actions. Is it love, compassion, and a genuine desire to uplift? Or is it greed, power, and a hunger to manipulate? The answers to these questions are rarely obvious, but they often reside in the subtle patterns of behavior that reveal the truth over time. For example, an evil person might present themselves as incredibly generous, always offering help or gifts. But if you pay close attention, you may notice that their generosity comes with strings attached. There is an unspoken expectation of loyalty, obedience, or repayment, and failing to meet these expectations often results in subtle punishments, withdrawn affection, manipulation, or even outright hostility. The mask of generosity, in this case, hides a transactional mindset where kindness is merely a tool to control. Another common mask is that of righteousness. This is perhaps the most deceptive of all, as it allows the wearer to claim moral superiority while committing harm under the guise of justice. Those who don this mask often speak in absolutes, positioning themselves as the ultimate authority on what is right and wrong. They use this authority to belittle, shame, or ostracize others, all while convincing themselves and others that they are acting in the name of a higher purpose. But true virtue does not need to proclaim itself. It acts quietly and consistently, seeking harmony rather than division. The most effective masks are those that exploit the vulnerabilities of others. Evil understands human psychology deeply. It knows that people are drawn to what they wish to see: kindness, hope, strength, or love, and it shapes itself to reflect those desires. This is why the mask is so difficult to recognize. It doesn't feel foreign or out of place. It feels familiar, comforting, even desirable. But this familiarity is the bait in the trap. The moment you let your guard down, the mask begins to slip, and the true face of the wearer emerges. What can you do, then, to unmask evil? The answer is not simple, but it begins with self-awareness. You must first confront your own desires, biases, and blind spots. What are you drawn to in others? What are you willing to overlook in pursuit of connection, success, or validation? The better you understand yourself, the harder it will be for someone to deceive you. When you can see your own masks, the ones you wear to hide your insecurities or project a certain image, you will become more attuned to the masks others wear. The truth is, we all wear masks to some degree. But there is a difference between the masks we wear to navigate life and those worn with the intent to harm. The former is a form of self-protection, a necessary adaptation to a complex world. The latter is a weapon wielded with precision to exploit, manipulate, and control. Recognizing this distinction is the first step in spotting the masks of evil. Evil thrives in the shadows, where its masks remain undetected. But by learning to look beyond appearances, by cultivating empathy, intuition, and a deep understanding of human nature, you can begin to see through the illusions. It is not an easy task, nor is it always comfortable. But it is necessary if we are to navigate this world with clarity, integrity, and a sense of justice. In the intricate web of human behavior, the line between good and evil is not always defined by actions alone. Actions are visible, tangible, they draw immediate judgments from those who witness them. Yet beneath every action lies intent, the invisible thread that ties motive to outcome. Understanding this distinction is essential, for judging solely by what someone does can often lead to misunderstanding their true nature. Consider a scenario where a person gives generously to charity. On the surface, the act seems noble and altruistic. But what if their true intent is to gain public admiration, build influence, or absolve guilt? The action remains the same, a contribution that might help many, but the intent behind it reveals a selfish core. Conversely, imagine someone who speaks harshly to a loved one in a moment of frustration. The action might appear unkind, even cruel, yet the underlying intent could be to protect, warn, or guide them towards something better. Without understanding intent, we risk misjudging both the action and the person behind it. Intent drives human behavior, like the wind moves the ocean's waves. It is the unseen force that shapes the flow of life, influencing decisions and interactions in profound ways. Actions are only the surface ripples. To discern whether a person's actions are rooted in kindness or malevolence, you must look beyond what they do to uncover why they do it. This is no easy task. Intent is not always evident, especially when someone has learned to mask their motives with a veneer of respectability or charm. But subtle clues often reveal the truth. One of the most telling signs of intent is consistency. When a person's actions align with their words and values over time, it becomes easier to trust that their intent is genuine. However, when there is a mismatch, when their actions serve only to advance their personal interests at the expense of others, this dissonance points to a hidden agenda. Evil, in particular, thrives on this inconsistency. It often hides behind acts of apparent kindness to gain trust, only to later exploit that trust for its own benefit. Another way to uncover intent is by observing how a person responds when their actions do not yield the desired result. A person with pure intentions will accept failure with grace and humility, understanding that their effort was sincere, even if the outcome was imperfect. But someone with selfish or harmful intent will react differently. They may grow resentful, blame others, or seek to manipulate the situation further to achieve their goal. Their reaction exposes their true priorities, revealing a focus not on the good of others, but on their own gratification or power. Intent also reveals itself in patterns of behavior. Evil is rarely a one-time act. It manifests in repeated choices that prioritize harm, control, or deceit. A single act of cruelty or selfishness does not make someone evil. Humans are complex, and even the best of us make mistakes. But when harmful actions consistently serve a selfish or destructive agenda, the intent behind them becomes undeniable. Recognizing these patterns requires patience and a willingness to look beyond isolated incidents to see the bigger picture. It is also important to acknowledge that intent and action are not always perfectly aligned. Sometimes people with good intentions cause harm through ignorance, poor judgment, or circumstances beyond their control. Similarly, those with harmful intentions might accidentally do good. Judging someone solely by their actions without considering their intent risks misunderstanding the essence of who they are. This is where empathy plays a crucial role. By putting yourself in someone else's position, you can begin to glimpse the motivations behind their actions, even if they are not immediately obvious. Understanding the relationship between intent and action is not just about identifying evil in others, it is also about recognizing it within ourselves. How often do we act without fully examining our motives? Do we give to feel generous or to be seen as generous? Do we speak truth to help others grow or to prove ourselves right? By questioning our own intentions, we develop the clarity and humility needed to discern those of others. Ultimately, intent is the foundation upon which actions are built. A seemingly good action rooted in selfishness carries a far different weight than the same action driven by love or compassion. Similarly, a seemingly harsh or negative action can be redeemed by a noble intent. To truly understand others and to protect ourselves from deception, we must learn to look beneath the surface. It is not enough to see what people do, we must also seek to understand why they do it. Only then can we navigate the complexities of human behavior with wisdom and integrity. Power and control are central to human interactions, shaping relationships, decisions, and even societies. At their core, they are neither inherently good nor evil, they are tools, forces that can build or destroy depending on how they are wielded. Yet when power and control are used maliciously, they become the hallmarks of an evil presence, manipulating others for selfish gain and leaving a trail of harm in their wake. To understand this dynamic, one must examine how power manifests and how control is exerted in ways that can reveal darker intentions. True power, when used with integrity, uplifts others. It seeks to inspire, guide, and empower, creating a ripple effect of growth and harmony. This is the power of a mentor who helps their students reach their potential, or a leader who sacrifices personal gain for the good of their people. Control, too, can have a positive aspect, such as when parents lovingly guide their children, or when structure is provided to maintain order in a chaotic situation. But when power becomes a means to dominate, and control is used to suppress rather than support, the seeds of evil begin to take root. The desire for power and control often stems from fear or insecurity. Those who crave dominance over others may do so because they fear vulnerability or loss of influence. By controlling the narrative, the environment, or the people around them, they create an illusion of safety or superiority. This need for control often escalates into manipulation, as the person seeks to shape reality to suit their desires, regardless of the impact on others. The more they succeed in this endeavor, the more emboldened they become, using power not as a tool for good, but as a weapon to maintain their position. One way to recognize the misuse of power is to observe how a person treats those who are powerless. Evil thrives on imbalance. It seeks out the vulnerable, the voiceless, and the weak, because they are the easiest to exploit. Someone who consistently belittles, intimidates, or coerces others, especially those who cannot fight back, reveals their true character. This behavior is not about strength, it is about fear disguised as dominance. True strength uplifts the weak, evil crushes them underfoot to feel superior. Control also reveals itself in the way individuals handle relationships. In a healthy dynamic, power is shared and control is mutual. Both parties respect each other's autonomy, creating a balance that fosters trust and growth. But when one person seeks to dominate the other, the balance tips dangerously. They may use tactics like guilt, fear, or dependency to keep the other person tethered, stripping them of their agency and self-worth. Over time, this control isolates the victim, making it harder for them to break free and easier for the perpetrator to tighten their grip. Evil often disguises its hunger for power and control in the language of care or necessity. "I'm doing this for your own good, or you wouldn't understand. I know what's best" are phrases that might seem protective but often mask a deeper intent to dominate. Such justifications are designed to silence dissent, making the victim feel small or incapable while elevating the controller's authority. This is not guidance, it is subjugation cloaked in concern. Another hallmark of those who misuse power is their inability to tolerate dissent or independence. They view free will as a threat to their control and will go to great lengths to suppress it. This suppression might come in the form of overt aggression, such as shouting or punishment, or more subtle tactics like passive-aggressive remarks or withholding affection. The goal is always the same: to erode the other person's confidence and reinforce their dependence on the controller. To spot the misuse of power and control, it is essential to recognize patterns rather than isolated incidents. Even the most well-intentioned person can have moments of overreach or frustration. What distinguishes an evil pattern is the consistency with which someone prioritizes dominance over connection, manipulation over honesty, and self-interest over mutual respect. Evil's use of power is not occasional but habitual, ingrained in how they interact with the world around them. The antidote to this form of evil lies in awareness and resilience. Understanding the dynamics of power and control helps us recognize when they are being misused. It also reminds us of the importance of our own autonomy and the need to protect it. Standing up to those who misuse power can be difficult, especially when they have built a web of influence or intimidation. But challenging their control is the first step in breaking the cycle and restoring balance. Ultimately, power and control are reflections of the individual wielding them. In the hands of the compassionate, they can be forces for good, creating environments where others can thrive. But in the hands of the selfish or malevolent, they become tools of oppression and harm. By understanding these dynamics, we can better navigate relationships, protect ourselves from manipulation, and strive to ensure that our own use of power uplifts rather than diminishes those around us. Fear is one of the most primal human emotions, a survival mechanism hardwired into our very being. It alerts us to danger, sharpens our senses, and drives us to protect ourselves and those we love. But fear, like any powerful force, can be manipulated. When wielded as a weapon, it becomes a tool of control and oppression, distorting reality and bending the will of others. Those who seek to manipulate fear understand its potency, using it to weaken resolve, cloud judgment, and suppress autonomy. Fear is an effective weapon because it bypasses rational thought, triggering instinctual responses. When someone is afraid, their ability to reason diminishes, replaced by a focus on immediate survival. Manipulators exploit this state, creating situations where their targets feel constantly unsafe or uncertain. By doing so, they ensure that their victims become dependent on them for guidance or protection. This dependency is the cornerstone of control, as it makes resistance or escape seem impossible. One of the most common tactics used by those who weaponize fear is exaggeration or fabrication. They may amplify potential threats or even invent dangers that do not exist. This keeps their victims in a heightened state of anxiety, always on edge and looking to the manipulator for reassurance. For example, an authoritarian leader might create the illusion of an external enemy to justify harsh policies, framing themselves as the only source of safety. Similarly, in personal relationships, a manipulative partner might instill fear of abandonment or failure to keep their counterpart compliant. Another way fear is wielded as a weapon is through isolation. Manipulators understand that people draw strength from community and shared understanding. By isolating their victims physically, emotionally, or psychologically, they strip away this support, making the individual more vulnerable. This isolation can take many forms, discouraging friendships, cutting off communication with loved ones, or sowing distrust among peers. Once isolated, the victim becomes easier to influence, their world narrowed to the perspective of the manipulator. The weaponization of fear also relies heavily on unpredictability. When someone cannot anticipate how another will act, it creates a sense of instability. Manipulators use this unpredictability to keep their victims guessing, ensuring they are always on guard. This constant state of uncertainty erodes confidence and self-esteem, making it difficult for the victim to take decisive action against the manipulator. What makes fear so devastating as a weapon is its ability to paralyze. A person consumed by fear may feel incapable of making choices, questioning their instincts and doubting their strength. Manipulators exploit this paralysis, encouraging a sense of helplessness that reinforces their dominance. They may frame themselves as the only one who can resolve the danger, further cementing their control. However, the weaponization of fear is not invincible. Awareness is its greatest antidote. When people recognize that fear is being used to manipulate them, they can begin to reclaim their power. It takes courage to face fear head-on, to question its source and evaluate its validity. But in doing so, individuals can break free from its grip, restoring their autonomy and clarity. Fear, though powerful, loses its hold when met with understanding and resilience. Virtue, in its purest form, is a quiet force. It does not demand recognition, nor does it seek applause. It simply acts in alignment with principles of goodness, compassion, and integrity. But in a world where appearances often carry more weight than substance, virtue can be imitated, its image crafted into a mask that hides ulterior motives. This illusion of virtue is a powerful tool for manipulation, allowing individuals to appear righteous while advancing self-serving or harmful agendas. The illusion of virtue thrives on perception. Those who create it understand that people are drawn to moral strength, to those who seem to stand for something greater than themselves. By adopting the language and gestures of virtue, acts of charity, declarations of morality, or visible gestures of sacrifice, they cultivate an image that others find trustworthy and admirable. Yet beneath this carefully constructed facade, their true motives often reveal a far different story: power, greed, or control. One of the most common signs of false virtue is the need for recognition. Genuine acts of kindness or morality are often done in private, without expectation of reward or acknowledgement. But those who cultivate the illusion of virtue are rarely content to let their actions speak for themselves. They seek praise, validation, and public acknowledgement, using their good deeds as currency to build influence or mask their true intentions. For them, virtue is not a principle to live by, but a performance to gain approval or power. Another hallmark of the illusion of virtue is inconsistency. While the outward appearance of righteousness is maintained in public, it often crumbles in private. This discrepancy is where the truth emerges. Someone who claims to be compassionate but consistently mistreats those closest to them reveals their virtue as a mere facade. True virtue permeates all aspects of life, while false virtue exists only in the places where it can be seen and applauded. The illusion of virtue also relies heavily on judgment and superiority. Those who wear this mask often position themselves as moral arbiters, quick to criticize others for failing to meet their standards. They use their perceived virtue to elevate themselves above others, creating an us versus them dynamic that reinforces their control. But genuine virtue does not separate, it seeks to unite and uplift. It does not use morality as a weapon, but as a bridge to understanding and compassion. The danger of false virtue lies in its ability to deceive. It can make harmful individuals seem trustworthy, convincing others to follow or support them. It can justify actions that cause harm under the guise of righteousness, turning cruelty into a form of justice in the eyes of the deceived. This is why it is essential to look beyond appearances and question motivations. Virtue that demands recognition, thrives on judgment, or exists inconsistently is often an illusion, a tool used to manipulate rather than to uplift. True virtue does not need to shine brightly to be real. It exists in quiet actions, in consistency, and in the absence of ego. By learning to discern the difference between authentic virtue and its illusion, we protect ourselves and others from deception and build a world guided by genuine integrity. Human behavior is complex, and no single moment can fully define a person's character. Mistakes are inevitable, and even the most virtuous individuals can falter under pressure, fear, or misunderstanding. However, while isolated actions may be influenced by circumstances, patterns of behavior reveal the deeper truths about who someone is. Recognizing this distinction is essential when trying to understand a person's intentions, particularly when determining whether their actions stem from malice or goodness. A single moment, no matter how striking, can be misleading. Acts of kindness, cruelty, bravery, or cowardice can arise spontaneously, often shaped by emotional context. Someone might act generously in one instance, only to act selfishly in another. This variability is part of being human, and judging someone solely based on one moment is both unfair and unwise. Patterns, on the other hand, are consistent over time. They reflect not just what a person does in a single situation, but how they consistently respond across different circumstances. It is in these patterns that the truth becomes clear. When someone repeatedly engages in harmful actions, it becomes difficult to dismiss their behavior as accidental or circumstantial. These recurring behaviors reveal a deeper intent or mindset, whether it be manipulation, dishonesty, or selfishness. Similarly, patterns of kindness, reliability, and empathy reflect a commitment to values that transcend individual mistakes. Recognizing these patterns requires time and attention. It involves looking beyond first impressions and paying close attention to how a person acts in varied situations. Manipulative individuals often rely on the hope that others will focus on moments rather than patterns. They may engage in sporadic acts of kindness to offset a broader pattern of harm, creating confusion about their true nature. This tactic often works because people tend to give the benefit of the doubt, focusing on a single positive moment as evidence of goodness while overlooking consistent negative behaviors. This is why it is so important to resist the temptation to judge quickly and instead observe over time. Patterns also emerge in how individuals handle responsibility and conflict. Someone who consistently shifts blame, avoids accountability, or creates chaos reveals a tendency toward evasion and dishonesty. On the other hand, someone who confronts challenges with humility and seeks resolution demonstrates integrity. These patterns provide a clearer picture of a person's character than any single choice or reaction ever could. Recognizing patterns is not only about identifying harmful individuals, but also about understanding yourself and the dynamics of your relationships. People are often drawn to others based on a single positive impression, only to find themselves hurt or betrayed when a broader pattern of behavior emerges. By focusing on patterns early on, you can avoid falling into cycles of disappointment or manipulation. Ultimately, the truth of a person's character lies not in what they do once, but in what they do repeatedly. Patterns tell the story of who someone is at their core, offering insight into their values, motivations, and intentions. While moments are fleeting and situational, patterns endure, revealing the deeper truths that guide behavior. Learning to focus on these patterns allows for clearer, wiser judgments in understanding both others and ourselves.